So at this point, she is screaming at him. He is screaming at her. The neighbor who called it in is watching from the driveway. And I'm standing in the middle of this living room thinking, I, I went to school for this. I actually studied. I passed tests. And somehow all of this has led to me in this exact moment, in this exact room, being yelled at by two people who 60 seconds ago, by the way, were yelling at each other.
They unified against you.
They found common ground, John. Yeah, in me. I was the common ground.
That's fantastic. It's also really interesting from a psychology standpoint.
Oh, I know. And that's why I saved it for this. Welcome to episode 3.
Welcome back to John Teaches Sean About His Brain. I'm John.
I'm Sean. Episode 3, season 4. And I want to say, after the last 2 weeks, we get to have a little fun today.
A little fun, huh? With an asterisk?
With an asterisk, yes. But this is still a story about real people in a real situation. And we're going to get to that. But the ride to get there is genuinely one of my favorite stories from my whole career, because I love movies, and structurally, this is like a movie script. It has a setup, a complication, and even a twist ending.
The twist being that you became the villain, right?
Well, spoiler alert, but yes, I became the villain of someone else's argument. And I guess my rule is there can't be a spoiler alert if the movie's over 20 years old. So I think we're okay. But I did not see this coming, which I think about more than I probably should.
So for anyone that's new to the show, each episode this season, Sean is going to tell us about a real call from his past as a police officer. And then I'm going to try to break down the psychology behind what's going on in the call. So last week was pretty heavy. This week, I hope we're going to laugh and then we're going to learn something maybe. And then we're going to have a small, unexpected feeling at the end.
Ooh, that's the John Page guarantee.
Yes, you can put it on a t-shirt. Okay. Tell me about this domestic disturbance.
Okay. So domestic disturbance calls. Okay. Real quick background for anyone who didn't work in law enforcement or hasn't watched a lot of reality TV, like Cops or whatever. A domestic disturbance call means someone has called in a fight, usually a neighbor, usually because it's loud enough that it's become a neighborhood event.
So it's crossed that threshold from a private argument to now it's a public disturbance.
Exactly. Yeah. And these calls are generally some of the most unpredictable calls you can go on, because the situation, it's already emotionally elevated before we even arrive. We're walking into something that's already in progress, and you don't know what caused it. You don't know what state you're going to find these people in. You definitely don't know how they're going to react to law enforcement showing up.
So just a quick question. How do you prepare for that?
What's
going through your mind? How do you prepare?
Because I don't know that you can prepare for it necessarily, but I think that the more, I'll kind of a little call back to our previous episodes, the more that you have built a schema around these calls. And then also, though, you have to be flexible, because you can go to the same house with the same family members on the same, not the same call, but the call is a family fight. You've been there before, but that's not every one of those calls is going to look different, even at the same house with the same people. So you just have to remain flexible too, right? But then also, with that being said, you have to make a certain amount of peace with the fact that you can't predict what's going to happen. So hence when I was saying you have to be flexible was, you just kind of got to be ready for anything. So this call comes in. It's a neighbor. They report a loud argument. It's the couple in the house next door, and it's been going on for about 40 minutes. My partner and I roll up, and as soon as we get out of the vehicle, right, we can hear it from the outside. Not the words necessarily, just the volume. And I'll tell you, the house is fully in it.
So when you're pulling up, what's going through your mind at that point? I can't even imagine getting ready to step into that.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is the assessment, right? Is this a verbal that's really long? Has it really loud? I mean, but has it gone physical? What's the energy level? Any signs of a weapon? we're trying to read
Mhm.
everything that we can. We're trying to take in as much information as we can before we even approach and knock on the door. But as
Mhm.
we get out of the car, I see the neighbor who called it in standing in her driveway. She's maybe, I don't know, she's maybe 60, arms crossed, and the look on her face of someone who has seen this movie before. And she's not enjoying the sequel.
There's no spoiler alerts for her. She knows it, and
Mm-mm.
she's probably over it at this point.
Deeply over it. She gives us a quick briefing, right? So we contact her as the reporting party, and she tells us the couple's been together about 4 years. This happens about once a month. As far as she knows, it's never gotten physical, but it's loud. And tonight, it's the loudest it's ever been. So she says, and I love this. She says, "I don't want them arrested. I just want them to stop." So believe it or not, that is, in my experience, one of the most common requests that we would get on a call like this. And that is also the request we have the least direct authority to fulfill.
Wait, you can't just legally mandate with your badge and gun that people stop arguing? Say, just
Mm,
stop because I've got a
we
badge on?
we cannot. So we can address illegal behavior, and then we have to try to use proper concepts and principles to increase the likelihood of a favorable outcome for all parties involved. So
Mhm.
I mean, we can separate people, suggest resources, and then we can make arrests if there's probable cause for any crime that happened in this call. But we cannot make two adults stop having an argument in their own home,
That's
which
probably a
it,
good thing.
well, but it actually surprises a lot of people, that fact. But anyway, so
Yeah.
so we knock on the door. The door opens, and it's like somebody flipped a switch. Mid yell, the woman opens the door. She's probably mid 40s, clearly furious. But the presence of cops at the front door has triggered, I don't know, some kind of like automatic social pause. She just says, and I quote, "Oh, thank God. Please come in. He's absolutely insane."
Oh, that's great. So she put you on her team right away. That was a smart move.
She deputized us immediately. And before I can even say anything, the guy, about the same age as her, standing, I don't, deep in 10 feet back into the living room, also clearly furious, also does the social pause. And he says, "Don't listen to her. She's the one that started it."
Of course. Perfect.
So it's textbook, right? For me. So now my partner and I, we're in the doorway, and both of these people are looking at us like we are the jury that just walked in. And I do the thing that I always do. I introduce myself, I introduce my partner, and say, the reason that we're here is we got a call from a neighbor that there was a loud disturbance, and we just want to make sure everybody's okay and find out what's going on. I delivered that very, in my assessment, very calmly, very neutral.
So you're Switzerland.
I I am Switzerland. I am so neutral. I am practically geographical. And they both start talking at once, right? So both trying to,
Yeah.
which means I can't understand either of them, but the energy in there is extraordinary and it's building. So I do the thing. I ask the male to step away and speak with my partner just for a few minutes, and my partner takes him to the kitchen. I stay in the living room with her. Standard procedure. You get the stories separately so they can't interrupt each other. And invariably, as they're if we're in the same room and they both start trying to talk to even the other cops, they will overhear their partner say something,
Yeah.
and then they will turn and start talking to that.
They'll try
It's
to correct
chaos.
it.
So
Like,
yes, right
yes.
on the spot. So
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 that's smart to separate them
yeah,
for that
and you
reason.
can actually now hear what's happening between these two people, right?
Yeah, yeah. Okay, that's smart. So what was her story?
Her story, and I want to be fair to her, okay? But it was long. It was comprehensive. I mean, it had context going back, I want to say at least 2 years. There were grievances in there that I'm
Only 2?
pretty, well, it may be longer because there were grievances in there that I'm pretty sure predated the relationship, but the immediate cause. So we got down to the core of the problem. Tonight's argument was he had made plans with his friends on an upcoming weekend that she had told him 3 weeks ago was important to her.
Ooh.
And he claims he forgot.
Ah, The, "Oh, I just forgot" excuse, huh?
The forgot, which is in domestic dispute terms a word that's a couple of words that do a lot of heavy lifting, right?
Yeah.
Because to her, my assessment of this was his forgetting is not a memory failure. She read it as a statement about her value. And
Yep.
let me tell you something. She has evidence. She has texts, John. She has screenshots. She is prepared.
So she came to the argument ready. She had all her ammunition ready.
Oh, she had receipts. Meanwhile, in the kitchen, my partner, and there is getting the male side, his version, which is that, yes, he forgot, he has apologized, and he cannot understand why the apology is not sufficient to just close this issue.
Yeah.
He feels like no matter what he does, the argument keeps resetting back to the beginning.
Mm,
He used a phrase, moving goalposts, which
mm.
I'm told is not a phrase you want to use in a situation like this.
No, that phrase is definitely off limits.
So, okay, so we have both stories. My partner and I then regroup for about 30 seconds in the hallway. And so we have to make a professional assessment here. Do we believe that that there was any physical contact, illegal physical contact during this argument? That takes us down a different road. We both agreed we don't think that happened in this case. Neither party alleged it. We didn't see any marks, or there was no evidence to suggest anybody had done anything physical. So we got that out of the way. And so now the next question is like, if we leave here, is everyone in this house going to be safe? That's impossible to say with 100%, but we have to do our best to assess the safety of everybody involved.
Yep.
So we got everyone is safe, no laws have been broken. And what we have here is a relationship problem that reached a volume requiring law enforcement involvement. So we turn around and address them again together. I start to explain everything very gently, that there's no criminal activity here. Everyone seems okay, but I encourage them to just take some space tonight, and then maybe down the road consider maybe talking to someone professional about some of the patterns maybe that they're describing.
That's reasonable.
I thought it was extremely reasonable. It was professionally delivered.
Good.
And she looks at me and she says, "So you're not going to do anything?" And yet again, I think calmly, I explain again, there is nothing actionable here. This is a private dispute between two adults in their home where no crime has been committed.
And?
And he says, "See, even the cops think you're overreacting."
No. Dude, what are you doing? No, don't say that.
No, I didn't say that. I said nothing remotely close to that. But something about those words, even the cops,
Even the cops.
it I could feel the atmosphere in the room change. She turns to him, and for a second, I think the argument is going to they're going to go right back into it. She looks at him, and then she turns back and looks at me, and her expression has changed. It
Uh-oh.
is no longer "help me." It's no longer "I'm so glad you're here." It's now "you have taken a side, and the side you have taken is wrong."
Oh, no, you were on her team, and now that alliance has shifted.
The alliance shifted in real time, and I watched it happen within about 90 seconds. And I want to be precise about the timeline because it's part of why I'm telling this story, because it amazes me. Within 90 seconds, both of these parties are, telling us we need to leave. We're not helping. We don't understand the relationship. Together, they're agreeing on this one thing, and that is that we need to leave and we're useless. Why did the neighbor call anyway? This is a private matter.
I love how you got ranked so briskly that, like, it's not any reasonable person would understand this. Is kind of is the unspoken term. But then she says, and even the cops, like he was saying, even the cops can see it. Like, not just a
Mhm.
reasonable person, but it's way down. Even the cops down here can see
Even
it.
even these dum-dums can see it.
Even these can see it. So now they've unified.
Against me specifically. And okay, to be fair, maybe I doth protest too much, but I do want to say another thing about police work that a lot of people probably don't know, but have seen if you've ever been contacted by by more than one police officer, is that there's generally, almost always, what's called a contact officer and then a cover officer. So the
Mhm.
contact officer is responsible for running the call. They talk to everybody, they do all the work, and then the cover officer kind of helps where they can. And that there isn't a set role. Those roles, depending on who gets dispatched, who gets there first, what's going on. That's an unspoken thing too. A lot of times where no one just says, "Okay, you're going to run this, and then I'm going to cover." It kind of happens. But on this call, the reason I said all that is on this call, I was the cover officer, which means I was out in front of this. I was
You were
the
the
face of this. I was the contact officer.
contact officer.
So my partner escaped. Right? I was the face of this intrusion,
Yes.
and so I'm standing there doing the math. Right, 2 minutes ago, she was grateful I was there, all it took one sentence from him, and now I'm the problem.
Mhm.
And the more I tried to explain to her why I couldn't do anything, the angrier she was getting. And then she started yelling at me, like raising her voice at me. And at this point, we were done. All I was trying to do was get out of there. But so I just asked her not to raise her voice at me. I tried being rational, right? I told her, I am not yelling at you. I would appreciate it if you didn't yell at me. And then he jumps in and he yells at me, don't talk to my wife like that. He is now defending her. So they both start yelling at me to get out of their house.
You have done a good deed. You have united two former enemies so quickly. So now they've voted you off the island. So how did you get out? Did you just walk out? How do you get out of a situation like
Oh,
that?
I mean, I gracefully and quickly. So I confirmed again, everyone was safe. I reminded them that if the noise continues, we'd be back. I left them list of resources. We have this like pamphlet we give out in situations like this, but I'm sure that went directly in the trash. And then we got out of there. So here's the I don't know if it's the worst part, but we walk out and the neighbor is still standing in her driveway, still arms crossed, looking right at us. I look at her, and she and I had a whole conversation without saying a word. It was just our faces.
So what was that conversation like? What did you say?
Well, her face said, well, that did absolutely nothing. And my face said, yep. So here's the thing. So we're walking back to the car, and my partner and I, we don't say a word to each other for a minute. We're just kind of standing there. And then he very thoughtfully, I mean, it was heartfelt. He looked at me and said, do you think they're going to be okay? And I said, I don't know. Maybe, probably. And he said, do you think they're going to be together in 5 years? And I thought about it. And and honestly, I genuinely have no idea. That's what I told him. I genuinely have no idea. I'm not sure that they do either.
That's always been the thing that's maybe fascinated me most about calls that you go on as police officers, and calls like this, or even calls like to a wreck or to something where you arrive on the scene when something major is happening and emotions are high and all of that. And you're there for, I don't know, 5 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever it is, whatever the length is, you
Hmm.
get that window to look into somebody's life and be a part of their life, and then you're gone and you don't know what happens after that. Like, you don't know if they're okay. Like, after a car wreck, you don't know if the person lives or not. You don't know
Right.
if these people stay together or not. That has to be difficult. I've always wondered about that. Like, how do you deal with that? Or, I mean, that seems like it would be really difficult to deal with.
I I didn't think about it when I was in it, but I've reflected on it since, and I know that. Well, I mean in our conversations, what I've learned is it the brain likes to solve problems and find cause and effect and know all the things that it likes to know.
And
Cops
complete
generally
something.
and completes. That's what I
Come
mean.
to a
Yes,
completion. Yeah.
yeah, and cops don't ever get that. Cops, and I would put in their
Mm.
dispatchers, right? So think about. I don't want to go too heavy into the background of how that, but I think of most people know or have some sense of this is like you call 911, you get a dispatcher. That dispatcher takes
Mhm.
the information and then relays that information to law enforcement or to fire or medics. But once they do that, um, that initial dispatcher who took the call doesn't have any fault. They generally don't know
Mm.
what happened. And so there's that end, because even on the call, the dispatcher who sent the officers there is not always the one that's on the call, so to speak. And
So
then
they're
the
just
cops go,
getting oh,
go
sorry.
ahead. No, go
Well,
ahead.
they're just getting, like, emotional punch after emotional punch. As soon as they hear all of these emotions, this fear, whatever, they send the call and they go, "Okay, now on to the next one." Then it's
Yep.
another person in distress, and they send
Yeah.
that on, and they go, "Okay, another" man, that has to wear on you, I would think, unless you just
I
learn how to turn
imagine.
that off. I don't know.
No, I don't think you can. It's got to wear on you, I think. But
Mm,
then that goes to the police officers, and then the police officers, like I said, just this call. Um, with we go out there, we meet these people, we're in their lives for 30 minutes or less or whatever, and then we leave, and it's never completed. You never know what happened
mhm, mhm.
with this call. And I don't know. It's something that maybe can't be answered, but like that lack of follow through, that lack of completion, the lack of knowing, I wonder if that wears on
Oh,
cops too,
yes. Yeah,
you
no,
know?
it does. I can tell you it does. Yeah, that's really difficult. That's why I've thought of it before because I thought, we're always talking about officers on having to face something where they're putting themselves in danger. So that's difficult to deal with. But what nobody ever talks about is, but now they are emotionally involved in a situation with people that they are playing a small part and then they walk away and they never know what happens after that. And I
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
actually didn't think of that on my own. I'm not smart enough, but I had a police officer tell me that once who said, "The hardest part about my job is I never get to know what finally actually happens." And he was telling me that based on like car crashes and things. Like I don't know if that person lived or died. I just have to go on. Then he said, I think about it. Sometimes I'll be laying in bed at night and think, man, I wonder what happened to that person, or I wonder if that person's
Mm,
okay. And so, I mean, obviously that's happened to you, right? Because you remember these stories. So there's
yeah.
probably stories you think about and go, wonder how that turned out. That's man,
Yeah.
that's hard because your brain, like you said, wants to complete things. It wants to wrap things up so you know the beginning and the end. And it's like watching a movie, watching 10 minutes into like 50 different horror movies and never knowing what happens. It would just, man, that would be difficult, I would think.
Be hard. And boy, I said this was going to be, I didn't intend on telling the story, but you kind of brought me here, I got called. I was on graveyard, but in the, kind of right before I was getting off shift, um, I got a call. There was a collision at a major intersection, and I show up, and a vehicle had been T-boned. The driver's side door had been hit by another vehicle and pushed in pretty far. And so I show up and I call for medics. And the guy was kind of pinned, not kind of, the guy was pinned into the driver's seat by the door that was pushed in. And so I'm talking to him, and he was, pretty shaken up. So I was trying to just keep him calm. And I kept telling him, like, you're going to be okay. And because he said to me, which really, I just thought he was in shock, but he said, "I don't want to die." And I was like,
Mm,
you're not going to die. You've been in a collision. It's okay. You're going to be okay. Medics are coming. I called for medics, blah, blah, blah. Medics get there. And then I start, directing traffic, and I get
mhm,
another unit there. We're directing traffic. I let the medics do their thing,
mhm,
and didn't really, I don't want to say I didn't pay attention, but they were doing their thing. I was worried
mhm,
about traffic.
mhm,
And then, I clear that call. I go home, go to sleep, and then I show up the next night, for work, and I actually see those medics on a different call. And,
mhm,
just randomly, it's weird, you don't where I worked was a big agency, you don't usually run into people like that,
mhm,
within that
mhm.
time frame, and I saw the medics, I said, "Oh, hey, that guy from this morning, how'd that go?" And he goes, "Oh, he didn't make it." And
Oh,
well, see, I'm getting a little, just
mhm.
sitting here right now thinking about it. I said, Whoa, 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 no, the collision and I told him the intersection." He goes, "I know who you're talking about. He
He
didn't
was
make
sitting
it."
there talking to me.
I said, "He was fine. We were having a
Mhm,
conversation. He wasn't bleeding. He
mm,
was fine." And and not to go into too much detail, but the physics of it, the vehicle, the way the door was what was keeping him alive. And as
mhm,
soon as they removed the door, he had
mm.
rapid blood
Yeah.
loss. And but I spent the whole at least that whole shift in the back of my head just like I told him he was fine. I
Yeah.
told him all of these things, and that is what I
Mm.
fully expected. Oh, yeah, he's he has a broken leg or he has whatever,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it felt like that guy hit me in the stomach with a baseball bat when that
Mhm.
medic said that. But
Mm.
anyway, I'm not saying I don't wanna know about calls, but sometimes, getting the completion was
Mhm.
gut-wrenching. It was
Yeah,
heartbreaking.
that's the other side of it. You're right.
Yeah, but then, when I left that agency, I've talked about all this, but I went to a smaller agency, and in the smaller agency, the call volume was a little bit less. We had more time,
Mhm.
and so, I always advocated when I was a field training officer or in training or whatever, to not on a call, but circle back to the house a week or 2 later on a call like this.
Mhm.
Go back and just knock on the door and just say, just stopping in to see how things are going.
Yeah.
Uh, and I don't think many cops do that, and maybe I'm the crazy person, but I feel like, going back and
I
talking
think
to
that's
them under
good.
different conditions,
Mhm.
hopefully when they're not, heated and upset and yelling at each other. I don't know. I thought it might make a difference, but that
I
was a
think it
lot of
does.
rambling about this.
No, no, I
Sorry,
think that's good. I think that's good to do that.
because I sure as heck didn't do it with these 2 because I was afraid.
They
I
turned on
mean,
you. You wouldn't wanna go
you
knock on that door. They don't like you.
no, right. I was afraid to go back to that. I wasn't afraid, but that was I'm kidding. But so, these 2 going back to this couple, because I have thought about them a lot, but not in the way that I was just talking about. They're fine. They're both adults.
Yeah, yeah.
They're in a relationship. They were going through something. What I think about with these 2 is the mechanics of what happened, what I witnessed in that room, right? Genuinely fascinated. Once I put some time in between me and the incident and I step back, here are 2 people who are completely opposed to each other. They are, I mean, the things they were saying to each other were just horrific, but in a moment, in a second,
Mhm.
they found a common cause. They found an outside target, and it happened in 90 seconds, and they never said a word to each other, and I doubt they planned it.
Yeah, no. I mean, you were that common cause. That was completely instinctive. It was just back channel survival.
Correct. Yeah, and that's the part that I can't shake. That's why I think about this call and why I wanted to talk about this call. The call itself wasn't anything out of the ordinary. It wasn't anything worth even talking about. It was this part. Cuz it here's what I it tells you something about how their relationship works
Mhm.
that I think I don't know for a fact, but neither of them probably even know this about themselves. This relationship, right? So what
Yeah.
is happening here?
Okay, so what you just described is, to me, a perfect example of a relationship that runs on the back channel. So we've talked about the back channel before. That's your non-conscious brain, and
Mhm.
that has automatic processes back there that do so many different things, and you're usually not aware of them because awareness, conscious awareness, is your on channel. That's what you're tuned into and understanding, but your back channel is all the stuff that your brain does that you're not aware of. So I mean, almost literally, this is a back channel story because nothing that actually mattered in that room was happening in the room you're in with them was happening in the on channel. I mean, in the conscious, logical, verbal part of the brain. So the weekend plans that the guy forgot and made plans on the weekend, the screenshots that she showed you, the apology he gave, all of that's real, but all of that is just surface stuff. That's just kind of part of the game, but that's not what is actually going on. And this is me thinking about it, not knowing these 2 people, but just hearing your story.
Right.
I
Right.
think the thing that drove that whole event and the thing that, like you said, was, flipped in 90 seconds was what was running underneath in the back channels. It's the part of the mind that doesn't use words, but runs on patterns and feelings. I think that's what it was.
Okay. Okay.
The fight was never about the weekend.
Right.
I
The
think I can show you, I think I can talk about what was actually going on and explain it to you.
okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so in a fight like this that they're having, there's really two arguments that are happening at once. There's the on channel argument, and that's with words. That's with them showing you the text and things like that. That's the argument that you could transcribe and then read back.
Mhm.
But then that the other one runs underneath that and doesn't use words. And that's the back channel argument. The back channel is almost always the real argument and not the on channel. And so here's why. When you say things like I forgot about that event, that person, again, I don't know these people precisely, so I'm just talking in general terms. When you say, "Hey, I just forgot, I'm sorry," that person, their conscious mind, their on channel is saying it was just a scheduling mistake. It was a logistical error, and that's no big deal. So an apology should take care of that, right? I mean, that's just sorry, but that's not where it lands on the other side of it. So to the female in that situation, it lands on her back channel in an entirely different way because one of the jobs of all of our back channels is to try to understand at every moment of every day where we stand in relationship to other people. So this is something you may not be consciously aware of, but it's something your back channel absolutely must be aware of because it has survival ramifications. Like, where am I going to land in this hierarchy determines how easy it's going to be to survive, what I get, what I can do. So where I stand is a huge part of what the back channel does is gauging that. So
Mm.
for her, she's trying to figure out where she stands relative to him, the other person in the relationship. And so she's looking at what matters to how much she matters to him and how much like where she ranks in his attention, the attention he gives to the things that matter in his life. So when she hears, I just forgot, that's not a calendar thing. That's not, oh, it was this weekend, I forgot. That's her understanding of it is you are not at the level you thought you were. Like if this gets blown off so easily, you're ranked lower than you ever thought you were ranked. So
And
yeah, so it has
and
nothing to do really with the weekend. I don't think.
maybe maybe this is oversimplifying too. I was just thinking about when we talked about emotional intelligence. Here, the way I think about it is information comes in, and then we assign a story to that information, assign a value to it, and then have an emotional reaction to
Yeah. No, that's
it.
exactly right. Yeah.
And so the information that came in was I made plans on that weekend,
Mhm.
and the story that she told herself was some semblance of I am not important enough to him for him to remember that.
Yeah,
And
that's
then
exactly
that's a
right.
negative value, and then I'm gonna react to that.
Yeah, and that's another thing that your back channel does. It's
Yeah,
always trying
yeah.
to estimate like where like it maybe estimate, but it also sorts the kind of the world into its estimations of this is good for me, this is bad
Mhm.
for me. And
Yeah.
so I need to approach the good and avoid the bad. So that's like a threat. A flag drops like this is a threat to us. And once that flag drops that this is a threat, then your whole system starts to ramp up like I've got to protect
Mhm.
myself. So she's hearing him say, so it's not just the weekend's the cover story. So that's like, yeah, it was a weekend. Like to him, that was, I'm off the hook now. I just forgot. But to her, it was like, no, you just ranked me down. And now I value that as that's bad for me. So that's a threat. So now my energy level goes up. And then that's the volume you heard when you pulled into the driveway was that energy
Mhm.
level was so high. So she didn't, so people don't make a decision just to start yelling to yell usually. It's
Right.
there's a threat that starts cranking that system up and activating it automatically. And you're not really choosing it. You're just responding how your back channel tells you to respond.
Right.
So by the time you knock, both of their systems have been running pretty hot for about what did the neighbors say about 40 minutes?
About 40 minutes.
Yeah, and they think they're arguing about the weekend, but but they're not. So he's defending against like, I can never please this woman. I made a mistake and said I'm sorry, and she won't accept that, and she's defending against, I must not matter to him. I don't know where I stand with him. So those are real positions, but neither of them can articulate that out loud probably, because none of us
Right.
usually can when we're in the middle of an argument. But that's, I think that's kind of where the 2 back channels were.
Mhm.
So I also think that the neighbor probably gave one of the best cues to all of this, or clues, I should say, when the neighbor
Oh.
said, "This happens," what did she say, like, once a month? No, what did you say?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
once a
no,
month.
she about once a month. Yeah.
Yeah, so
How is that a cue? What does that tell
well,
you?
because that shows there's a cycle. So it's like once a month this happens, like, we have to call, they argue once a month. So if that's true, so we'll believe the neighbor that that's true. If that's true, then that's a cycle, and anytime there's a cycle, then one of the things you can do is think about, why would there be a cycle? Like, what's that cycle for? What does that cycle do? Because from the outside looking at it, like when we just look at it, it's like they're just dysfunctional. That's just pure dysfunction. Like,
Mhm.
why would you run that same loop where you're yelling at each other every month on purpose? But
Right.
the back channel doesn't keep doing things that don't have some payoff. If there's not a payoff, it stops. So it only does
Oh.
things that have a payoff, and it keeps trying to get to that payoff. So that loop of fighting every month probably has some type of payoff. And so if we
Mhm.
think about, how does the cycle pay off? What's the mechanism behind that? Because think about it, the tension builds some point, so that energy starts to climb, and it doesn't probably just happen in one day. It's probably starting to happen slowly and building, where then you see, now all of a sudden you walk into a room, you see that person, you're like, your hackles kind of go up, and you're like, and you walk out, and then it just keeps building and building. It climbs and climbs. And then when it gets to some point, when it gets so high, then as it starts to rise, you know this from being a police officer, you have, as the water level goes up, because if you think of on channel, back channels being an iceberg, stress can pull that iceberg underwater. So the tip of the iceberg is your on channel. And if the iceberg's getting pulled underwater, now your on channel has less and less resources to do what it needs to do. So, and to process what it needs to process. So now that creates tunnel vision. So the attentional spotlight just narrows down into anything that's threatening, like right in front of you. So that's why neither one of them can see the loop that's happening, because both of them have kind of, they're tunneled into the stress. And so eventually, as that builds, that energy has to discharge in some way. And the fight is usually the discharge. That's the
Mhm.
release valve. Then that kind of sets them apart. They fight. And then after the fight is the reconciliation. So you've always heard that, break up, make up is the best
Uh-huh.
thing. Some people just fight just for the makeup afterwards.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that's a trope, I know, but there's some truth to that. So the reconciliation is maybe the part that's actually mattering to them, because if you think about reconciliation being 2 nervous systems, 2 brains are starting to come back into rhythm with each other, then that starts to settle and co-regulate. Things drop back down to baseline, and that feels really good.
And then we can make it a month until we have to do it again.
Well, then it feels good for a little bit,
Right.
but then they
Yeah.
annoy you, and they annoy
And
you
then
back, and
starts
it starts
building
to
up.
build again, build,
Yeah.
build, build. And then it's a relief when you get the kind of that baseline coming back down, and that makeup and that rhythm coming back together. That's a relief. And it may feel like I'm more connected now than I've been in a long while. And that's when your back channel goes, okay, this is the feeling I want. This connected feeling, like, this is what I'm longing for. I've got to get to this. And so how do I get this feeling? It's after after our energy and anger climbs and climbs, and then we blow up, and then we can come back together, and I get to feel this again. And so why would I stop that cycle? Because there's the relief at the bottom of the cycle that's so reinforcing that it's worth the tension building just to get that loop going again. So it might not be that they're consciously choosing it, but it's kind of self-feeding because the system that brings him back into sync only happens or only fires or only works after a rupture. Is that too
I am
much
it
psychobabble?
is it's not enough. I am dumbfounded. I
That is
like
that was a lot of psychobabble.
no, no, John, no, the idea that in order to feel the feeling of connectivity,
Mhm.
that we got, we have to annoy each other, have a blowout just to get the good feeling.
Yeah.
And all of that in the back channel, right? Not the
Mhm.
logical, all of this would sound like lunacy to the on channel, but to the back channel, it's like, no, 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 I need that feeling. And I know
Mhm.
that feeling only comes from this process. So we're going to go through this process. We're going to
You know,
annoy
we
each
talked
other.
last week about gambling and that the
Yeah.
dopamine
Yeah.
hits. This
I'm
is a
relating it
major dopamine hit.
exactly to that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. This is the
I,
dopamine hit.
yeah. But in order to do it instead of gambling, I have to get you mad at me and then be mad at you and then have an argument.
Yeah, and that's actually that's so rewarding because you always know the outcome's always the same. So it's like,
Yeah.
I know what this is building to, and this is gonna be good when it's over. Yeah, so
So they're regulating each other through conflict in a
yeah,
relationship.
in a
That's
sense, yeah. So I wanna get to that part because I wanna get back to kind of the hopeful side of this, but before I
oh,
do that,
okay.
I wanna talk about this part because to me, this is what's really fascinating. So you're talking about
Oh,
that 90-second pivot where they turned on you all of a sudden, like they were
yes.
fighting, you walk up, and then there's that pivot. So this is what's fascinating. I love this part of it. So I want to slow it way down and then
Okay.
almost like I'm drawing it up on a whiteboard, like we're going to draw out this game plan and talk about it. So if you go back to the room that they were in, before you opened your mouth, you knock at the door and you come in. This is kind of what's happening in the back channels in that room, in those two people's back channels. So when she sees you, she draws a line. So we all have another process the back channel does is it tries to figure out how to separate us from how to know the difference between self and non-self or us and other. Like there's a dividing line between what's me and mine and what's other people's, what's them and what's others. So
Mm,
it's kind of like a line gets drawn. Your back channel draws this line. And so her back channel system drew that line when you came in, and she drew it around you and your partner when you walked in. That's why she said, "Oh, thank goodness you're here." Because now when I said you're on her team, that was her drawing that line and he was outside of it. So he's still
mhm,
the threat. So anything that's outside of that line is a threat. So that the part of the brain that separates or sorts the good and the bad had tagged him red. No, is it black or red? Red? Like, is red the danger or the threat? Or black is the highest threat, right? I can't remember. But she tagged him red, let's say. So I'm trying to add in I'm trying to also be the law enforcement side of this, and I
mm.
realize you're the law enforcement side, so I'll leave that to you. So
Oh,
she
are you
tags
talking
him
about
red.
the color codes?
Yeah, just the color codes, like
Oh,
you
no. Well, just say tagged him red and that's fine.
okay. I was
Those
trying to
color codes
sound
are
cool, like
so
I was
oh,
in law
no.
enforcement too.
I was sitting here thinking you were talking about something from psychology, and then I
Oh, no.
realized, oh, you're talking about the color code. So just so you know, condition black is when you are completely underwater. The officer
Okay.
is you talked about the iceberg.
Mhm.
Condition black, the way that they use it in law enforcement is there is nothing of the iceberg above the
It's
waterline.
all the way it's sunk all the way.
It's submerged.
So
But
red is right before that?
red is on high alert.
Okay, so
High alert.
her system has tagged him red. She is high
Okay.
alert against him.
Yeah. Okay.
And the system that syncs with other people, like how you kind of open up and be open and willing to talk to other people and sync with them, which is the system that they eventually get to where they're back in sync together. That has it's completely shut to him. The gates are closed. Like you are not allowed anywhere near me right now. So if you don't, then that's because that's for survival reasons. You don't sync with something that's the threat. Like if that's the enemy and that's the threat, you shut down from that. You definitely do not sync with that. So that line has been
Mm,
drawn. I'm not going to get near him. Then he says at one point, even the cops know you're, no, what did he say? Even the cops think you're
they think
overreacting or
you're
something like
overreacting.
that. Yeah, even
Yeah,
the cops think you're overreacting of all things. I mean, look at you.
yeah,
Even the cops think you're overreacting. And that at that point, that's where the lines get completely redrawn. So it's not probably something she did. I'm certain it's not something she did consciously, or her on channel did, but her back channel is like, whoa, even the cops. So now all of a sudden that line is redrawn and it's drawn around him, bringing it into her, and now you and your partner on the outside. And it's
mhm,
something that your back channel does. So now you are on the wrong side of that. Now you're code red or whatever it is, because that's the verdict that's just been rendered for you. You're an outsider now. So that
yeah.
threat swivels to you kind of. Yeah. So now you're the problem.
And I am
Does
the
that make
problem. It's
sense? I don't even know if
I
this
didn't
makes sense to
deserve
you.
it. No, no, no. It makes sense. I really like the lying part of it. Right? Is that even without knowing that her brain did that is
Hmm.
we come in and then we're on her side, so he's
Hmm.
outside, and then something is said or done, and then that line shifted, and all of a sudden now they're on one side of it, we're on the other side of it together.
Yeah. And what
I
what is again? I love when stories like this can kind of demonstrate or show what the brain is doing, what the back channel is doing. But once, I said when you have that line drawn and you're the threat, I can't sync with the threat because that's not good for survival. I have to protect myself against the threats. But now that that's been reassessed and you and your partner are the threat, and that line now includes him, now she can sync with him. So she can open that gate and it opens up. They are on the same side immediately, just like that. It's an instant thing. And they
Mhm.
don't have to decide what they're going to do. Like they don't have to talk about a plan. Hey, should we join the same team for a little bit? It just happens because that line was redrawn and now they're on the same team. And if they had to try to plan that and strategize it, it would have taken longer than an instant to do. It
Yeah,
would have taken
yeah.
a little bit of time and you would have seen it happening. It just happened. So they couldn't have decided that fast. They couldn't even have formed a sentence to talk to each other about that. So it wasn't a strategy. It was just the two back channels understanding that they're together now and you're the threat. And so boom, they just both turned on you.
Yeah, so before I got there, and even when I walked in, they couldn't agree on one single
Yeah.
thing, and I accidentally gave them something to agree on.
Yeah. You gave them the shared threat that they needed. that's that's actually probably the oldest sync up there is in biological history. So it's older than language, probably even older than our species itself, is that back channel knows below a level of thought that the fastest way to bond two organisms together is to say, that's the danger. We're over here and that danger's over there. So when you walked in, you were on her side, but at one point you became the danger. And then when you became the danger, you handed them like you gave them the most connection they had that whole evening, probably for a couple of weeks.
Oh,
You
so wait though, if we change that, if the back channel got some kind of reward out of that interaction, then once a month they have to fight to get the cops called on them, and then fight with the
That could be a
cops,
part
and
of
then
it.
that
That
I
could be
was
a part
somewhat
of it.
being facetious,
No,
but oh
I
boy.
mean, but that's how psychobabble works, right? Because that really could be part. We don't know because I don't know these people, but anything in the environment, any pattern that gets reinforced can be the pattern again. So
Mm,
the
okay.
officers who showed up every month were doing couples therapy, even if they didn't
Yeah.
realize it or not. That's kind of an unconventional technique for couples therapy. I don't recommend it,
Uh,
but
yeah, it's
it
okay.
worked.
Sure.
And there's a word for this. I'll give you a word. It's called triangulation. Have you heard of that? It's where a
No.
it's where a third party gets pulled into a two-person fight, and then the heat gets redirected towards that third person that just walked up.
Oh, that makes sense. That
And
makes
it's
sense.
kind of referred to as triangulation.
Yeah. I was thinking about, outside of this context, there's a trope in movies, but I've seen it in real life too, where 2 brothers are at each other's throats,
Mhm.
and then some outside party tries to intervene or says something to one of them, and then they both turn and now they're united
Exactly.
against it.
And
Triangulation.
Garfield the cat, like, always, like, beating up on Odie, the dog,
Mhm.
and then somebody starts to beat up on Odie, and, like, Garfield will clobber him, said, "Nobody picks on Odie but me."
Yeah.
Is that
That's
yeah,
exactly
that's
yes. Yeah.
triangulation, yeah. So,
Triangulation.
but I think it's also important if we have time to talk about one other thing, and that's that obviously not every couple runs this hot all the time where cops have to get called on 'em. Like, I've never had the cops called on when Casey and I fight, we do it quiet enough that nobody calls the cops on us. Like, you probably have never had the cops call on you for domestic dispute. So
I have not.
not everybody runs that hot. So the systems that we're talking about, the ones that like track where do I stand in relation to this person and how do I value the good and bad, where do I draw the line between self and other, those systems in the back channel and kind of determine how you respond in a situation. And they don't reset back to their factory settings between events. Like there's no
Mhm.
like just okay, we'll start over between each event. They've been calibrated throughout your whole life. Your lived experiences calibrate these systems, and it starts really early, long before this couple's relationship started. It goes all the way back to the first relationships we've ever had, really at childhood. So the first people that we form relationships with, which is usually our parents and our siblings, they either show up for us reliably and have our back and we know what to expect, or they don't. And that's where it all starts. So
Mm.
if connecting with a parent and forming a bond and a closeness that was really you could count on it, it was steady, it was secure, it was safe while these systems are forming, then they settle at kind of a comfortable calibration. And then the line between self and others is in a reasonable place. And so you can sync up with people more easily and more readily. You're open because that system doesn't get punished for being open and doesn't get, hammered for expecting something. But if that bonding relationship and that closeness is unpredictable. So sometimes they show up and have your back, and sometimes they don't. Sometimes they throw you under the bus. Then that
Mhm.
system is going to calibrate in more of a defensive mindset, and then you carry that calibration with you afterwards. So that's the other thing is, not everybody has to run hot in cycles of calling the cops once a month.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that makes sense. I thought I had a
So
question
hers
and
was
I
probably
realized I didn't.
calibrated that I've gotta always know where my standing is because I don't know. Like, I don't know from
Mhm.
moment to moment where I rank and what my hierarchy is. So, one minute, growing up, one minute, I was being doted on and thought I was something, and the next minute, I'm just being, like, smashed to the ground, like, with words or even physically, like, just being I feel like I'm a nothing and a nobody, and then all of a sudden, "Oh, I'm somebody now," and then I'm nobody, and it's like, "Where do I rank in here?" So now that becomes so important, so any little thing like, "Ah, I forgot about that, sorry," it's like, that just I just got smashed again," which a person that's calibrated more in a way that they're not expecting that might go, "Oh, you forgot. Okay, no big deal." But
Mhm.
somebody who grew up differently is gonna have that, and then, his system might have been the other way where it's like, "Yeah, I just forgot." Like, why is that a big deal? Because he doesn't understand the other side of it. So then you've got people trying to come together that have grown up differently and have different lived experiences, and it can be hard, but it's something that, we all work through, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's different. Everybody starts differently.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think one last thing.
You
I
go
think
ahead.
that if they go to you told them the right thing when you said, maybe, here's some pamphlets and maybe you can go get some help, some professional help. I think that is actually a good thing because couples therapy is what they need, but it's also takes a certain type of therapy. So there's some good therapies out there, but for couples therapy, there's something called emotionally focused therapy. And
Okay.
it would be really good in this instance because the therapist wouldn't waste any time focusing on his decision for that weekend because they understand that's the surface level. It's like we've got to get below that and figure out where the problem actually lives. And it's that cycle is where it actually lives. So then they would talk about what are the real questions? Like for you, for the female, you're always worried about where you stand in the relationship. And for the male, you're worried about, I can never please her. Why am I always screwing up? And so they can start focusing on different things like you're a failure and you're thinking you're a failure and you're thinking that you don't line up exactly. And they can talk about it from that point. And, one or two sessions doesn't change things because it takes a long time to rewire the brain. Well, not a long time, but it takes consistent effort over a period of time to change the brain. So you can
Yeah.
eventually change it, but it's just something that you have to make an effort for. So therapy is a good choice, but they have to put in the time for that. So I was wanting to add that too, not just any therapy. It has to be good therapy.
Well, good point. And I didn't this the first I've heard of this kind of therapy. I wish I would have known that when I left the pamphlet. I could have been a little bit more specific, but
Go find an emotionally focused therapist. I see the fight you're having. Like some people, I would suggest this, some I would recommend this, but for you, I think you need the emotionally focused therapy.
Yeah, I don't know how that would have gone either, actually. So,
Okay. So this is going to be the same question that I'm starting to ask every episode now.
oh
But
yeah, okay.
now that you have heard kind of the ideas behind why things might have happened the way they did, does that change how you think about the call?
Yeah, yeah, in a different way than the first 2 weeks that we did this. Listen, episodes 1 and 2 were about understanding people who were in dark places. I'll just
Hmm.
say it that way.
Hmm.
This one, these were just 2 people stuck in a pattern that they couldn't see.
Yeah.
Right. So, like I said this before, the call itself was on the surface just kind of funny. The pivot towards me, the neighbor, pivot towards me becoming the common enemy.
Yeah.
But underneath that, I felt like there were 2 people who actually cared about each other and just didn't have the proper tools to show it in a way that the other one could effectively receive.
Yeah, that's it actually. That's exactly it. The fight wasn't really about the weekend plans. The fight was about, do I matter to you? And then his fight was, am I enough to like, why am I never enough? So neither of them were saying those words probably, but the argument about the weekend kept going in circles because of that.
Yeah, they were arguing about the wrong thing.
Yeah, they're arguing about the wrong thing. And that's true probably for most couples conflicts and relationships. The surface argument is probably never really the real argument.
I've thought about that couple genuinely, actually. I hope they figured it out or figured out that they couldn't figure it out. And that's where they went. Either way.
That's a good way to look at it. I like that.
I have a pretty good teacher, John.
Are you just trying to get a good grade?
I don't, is it working?
Maybe. I
Oh,
never minded that. I don't mind the apple on the desk every now and then.
okay.
Okay. So next week, episode 4. So Sean, you're going to talk about a call that came in as something totally routine and turned out to be a full mental health crisis in disguise. So we're going to talk about psychosis, mania, and why the way we train people to recognize those different states, those different mental states, is still in a lot of cases wrong.
Yeah, that one's a good one. We'll see you then.
Thanks everyone for listening.